Welcome to the show, everyone. This is the SmashPod brought to you by SmashUp Fantasy Sports, the only next-gen fantasy game where you can choose your players, choose your cards, and then just dominate and smash your opponents. I'm Ming, a.k.a. Chef, here with my boy Chris, the Hawk. We are back. The NFL is back, baby. We just kicked off some NFL last night. Excited to jump into more NFL and fantasy today. But how's it going, Chris? Before we get things kicked off, how are you feeling about fantasy season and the football season kicking off?
We are so back. It was so fun to watch last night. And I hear that you have a big date night with the wife tonight.
I do have a big date night. Unfortunately, that's a surprise, man. Can't reveal all my secrets, you know? But that does mean that we're going to miss, or at least I'm going to miss the Packers-Eagles game tonight, which I think is going to be a really big one. Really going to be an exciting matchup. I have a lot of love, a lot of A.J. Brown, so I'm excited to see how they play out. But they're playing in Brazil, which is interesting and also dangerous. They're like locked up in their hotel rooms. I don't know if that means their performances are going to be poor, if they're going to be like ready to bust out of their cages and the score is like 38-35 or something like that. What do you think about tonight? What's your bold prediction about tonight's game?
I love Green Bay, but I got Philly. I think Philly's going to win, and I think that A.J. Brown and you both do a touchdown dance.
I hope so. That'll be good times for tonight then. But last night, things got kicked off with the Chiefs and the Ravens, like we kind of talked about. It was an exciting matchup. I mean, two really good teams. It went back and forth, went down to the wire, essentially, down to the toe. Likely was in the back of the end zone, couldn't quite get in, and just missed out on tying the game. And they were going to go for two. I don't know if you saw that Harbaugh was calling for two, so they were going to go for the win there if that touchdown counted. But what was your reaction to that last play at the very end?
I mean, I think it's predictable. It was the result of Isaiah Likely training with Kevin Durant all summer.
Another obscure reference from a basketball game, likely 4 years ago or so.
2021. I have no life. I'm a sad person, Ming. This is all I have.
Yeah, and what was his name? What'd you call him? Kevin Durant. That was like a little French announcer pronunciation there. Kevin Durant.
Well, when we were doing our little warm-up, I was talking in that like fake European accent. I think it just carried over to the show.
A la Kevin Durant. Okay. Carrying on to
our... Durant, his toe was on the line. Durant, the heartbreak. Sorry, New Jersey fans.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. But
please.
We've got some actual fantasy and some football content to talk through. Because we've been talking about drafts all summer long and we're finally ready to roll into the regular season, we're going to go over some of the players that ended up on a ton of our teams we have a lot of exposure to, and maybe some that just did not for whatever reason. Either they just were players we were intentionally avoiding, or that we just couldn't get on our squad because maybe they were getting sniped or taken earlier than we thought they would. But we're going to talk through that. We'll talk through also some of our favorite SmashUp combos. SmashUp Fantasy Sports is also back. So we're going to talk through our favorite combinations of players, cards, how we plan on using them for week one, and then just give some insight for listeners to think about as they play up their Smash card and player combinations for their league play that's kicking off this year. Exciting stuff. Excited to jump in. Why don't you kick things off, Hawk? Who is a player that either surprisingly or because you targeted them ended up on a lot of your squads this year so far?
Yeah, so surprisingly, because I spent all of our other podcasts with you talking about how I thought he was going too high and I didn't want him, I have on like 4 teams Dalton Kincaid. And I think
I love Kincaid. You know I love Kincaid, but I'm surprised you got more of him than I probably did.
So I like him, but the thing is his ADP was going like 4th round a lot of the time. But in auctions, by the time tight ends came around a little bit later, he was going for $8 to $11, and at that price, it was a steal. So I just found myself having him a lot of teams.
Yeah. So I love Kincaid, and I'm in a lot of the leagues that you're in. We're in a lot of leagues together. So I saw some of those same things where Kincaid, from an auction perspective, was not going at those like elite tight end costs. Laporta went for $31 in one league at one point. I believe that was you. Would much rather have Kincaid at 10. We'll talk about that a little bit later. I know that's something we want to bring up. And, in snake drafts, he was kind of fallen into the later rounds further than I thought he would be. But, maybe that's just the difference between some industry drafts versus home leagues. So interesting call. Someone that I saw ended up being on a lot of my teams this draft season was James Cook. And I think that's a combination of me liking Cook this year. I think he's going to be someone who gets a lot of volume in that Buffalo offense, which we know is going to be high powered. I think they lost a lot of target competition with receivers and just weapons in general. So I'm excited to see what Cook does. He was excellent down the stretch. Once Joe Brady took over, he was a prime centerpiece. So I think he just takes off from there. So I'm glad to see that he was on my team in a lot of leagues. Who's someone that is not on your teams, and maybe surprisingly so, or because you avoided them on purpose?
Again, a surprise. A guy you and I both talked up a lot this offseason, maybe a little bit less after last night. Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
I liked him. He kind of moved up ADP a bit and wound up kind of in the middle of the second round in a place where I literally didn't get him in a single draft. I didn't get him in best ball, even though I still think he's going to have a really good season.
Yeah. I like Henry a lot. I feel like on that ADP point, he was a little bit low earlier in the summer on ADP. He got pushed way up to maybe like very, very early second. And then towards the end of draft season, maybe like a week ago, you could see him dip back a little bit. I do think Henry's game last night, 45 yards and a touchdown, that's his baseline. I think we're going to see better days ahead. That was a really, really tough defense that they were playing against last night. The Chiefs D is not going to be the same D that they see every week. So I still think 20 touchdowns is the benchmark that we're going to be shooting for Henry this year. All right, someone that I didn't see on my teams at all, and I wasn't even expecting until the very last, essentially second, was Isaiah Likely. Likely was not on any of my teams. He was not on my radar. I grabbed him, luckily, in one league as a backup to Brock Bowers because I felt like I needed a second tight end there. And, maybe we should have been paying more attention to his stretch run last year when Andrews was hurt. He was phenomenal down the stretch last year as the main tight end weapon. There was strong camp buzz about him potentially being used in addition to Andrews. But last night he started and he was being used in addition to Andrews. And it looks like there's going to be a lot of 2 tight end sets in Baltimore this year, especially with the fact that O-line being worse off than last year. So I like Likely. I'm glad I grabbed him. I just didn't grab him in enough leagues, and he's probably available in your guys' leagues right now to grab on the waiver wire.
What I love, though, is you're definitely setting up another Glenn Galloway situation where the guy, they're going to rotate. The guy you start every week is going to poop the bed, and the guy on your bench is going to put up 20. Because I think Likely and Bowers are 2 guys who both might be really inconsistent.
Yeah, I have 21 points from Likely sitting on my bench for week 1 already. So it's already begun. And it sounds like it's going to be maybe a real life situation of that between Andrews and Likely. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Well, next week, his 2 points will be in your lineup.
Now I'm kind of like mind fucked. Am I going to play Bowers now to make sure that doesn't happen? I don't know, man. See, this is gonna bother me all season long. All right. We'll see. Maybe we get a couple weeks of data and we see like what the right play is. All right. So another thing we wanted to do, Hawk and I were talking about this is, speaking of the season, it's easy to be 100% right at the beginning of the season because nothing's bared out yet. So we have some bold takes on what's going to happen this year, and we'd like to share them with you because we think we're right. And even though they may be bold takes, there's a high probability that they may bear fruit until week 2. Then we see that they fall flat on their faces. But Hawk, why don't you kick us off? What's one of your bold takes for the season for fantasy players?
Well, as you know, 60% of the time I'm right every time. So look, I'm gonna give you 2 here because one I'm gonna go through really quick. Amani Cooper, I have spoke about him plenty on this show. I'm not gonna get into detail again, but I think he's gonna be a top 12 receiver, and his ADP
top
was 12. Top 12.
Okay. Spicy.
Now let me keep the spice kicking, but with a little more explanation, which is Justin Fields. I think that he starts at least 7 games, and you can verify. I had this written in the pod sheet even before the Russell Wilson calf news came up. I think he starts at least 7 games, averages the same 20 points a year, average the last 2 years. He's essentially the kind of guy who is better at fantasy football than real life football.
Yes.
But I will, doesn't matter. If he gets to a championship ring, that's what counts. And I think he's going to be on a lot of contending teams who went heavy on running back, receiver, and their drafts and just are missing that quarterback.
Yeah, and I think Fields is on a lot of waiver wires right now, right? So he can be grabbed and stashed. Yeah, he's on your bench. He may be on waiver wires in a lot of leagues, but I think he could be a league winner. He's proven that he can produce at a high level. I've seen him do that on my teams. I've also seen him tank some of my teams, but we won't talk about that anymore. All right, so I like those 2 takes. Yeah, new season, new beginnings, right? All right, I have 2 takes to give to. One is a name that I've talked about all summer. I love Jake Ferguson, and my bold take is he's going to be a top 5 tight end. Book it, man. Top 5 tight end. I'm on the Jake Ferguson train, and here's why. There's been no changes to that offense. We know that. The only help that they brought in is Ezekiel Elliott back into that backfield. He's going to split time with Rico Dowdle. There's been no talent upgrade essentially in either the backfield or the receiver room. I know we've joked about Brandon Cooks, but
dude, he's only 47. He's still got one more season left in the tank.
His name is appropriate. He's cooked. Ferguson will remain the second pass catching weapon option in that offense. He was already tight end 6 from weeks 8 through 18 last year.
You love it. Like you were one step away from just showing up on people's doorsteps with like a tie and a book and saying, "Can I tell you about our Lord and Savior Jake Ferguson?" Like you are proselytizing him like out there in the streets. You love this guy.
I mean, I love his value, right? So I love his value.
Is your date night today with Maryland, or are you taking out Jake Ferguson? I'm honestly not sure at this point.
Are you done, or can I finish?
Finish.
Okay. So Jake Ferguson was tight end 6 already from weeks 8 through 18. He was top 6 in red zone opportunities in the NFL, not on his team in the NFL. And he only scored on 33% because of bad touchdown luck. So if we have a little positive regression there, he's already going to be vaulted in the top 5. So like Jake Ferguson as a top 5 tight end. The other is a player that's kind of polarizing. Not because people don't think he's good. I think they're just concerned about the backfield mix, health, things like that. But Devon Achane is going to finish as a top 3 running back. And he was kind of drafted early second round in most drafts this year. But I think the difference between last year and this year, one, he's got to stay healthy, obviously. That's kind of baked in his ADP. I think if he played a full season, he would be a top 3, top 4 selected back already, right? But that ADP is baking in some of that risk. But the big difference and differentiation from last year is he's now going to be unlocked in the passing game this year. So Miami is going into the regular season week 1 with 3 healthy wide receivers. 3. They're starting a rookie as their 3rd wide receiver. So they're really just rolling with Waddle and Tyreek, obviously. But Achane ran 48% of his routes from the slot or out wide. That easily led the NFL in running backs ahead of Christian McCaffrey. If he plays more than the 11 games he played last year and like 14 games even, if you look at just his numbers from last year, he will be over 1,000 yards rushing, at a minimum 250 yards receiving, which is what he was on pace for last year. And that's without him being more utilized in the passing game. And he was on pace for 14 touchdowns. That already puts him up in those top 4 or 5 numbers. If he just expands his game a little bit, he'll be top 3. Love Achane this year. He is high risk, high reward though. So I will say I only grabbed him in 1 league. I wanted to have him, but I know the risk is there. So I didn't have exposure across all teams.
That's a great call. I love it.
All right. So what else do you got? You got another one?
Yeah, I got Ken Walker the third, KW3, as we call him in the biz. Look, this guy was a league winner just about his rookie year. Absolutely electric. I had him. Almost took me all the way, except he got hurt, which side effect of any running back that can happen. But the guy's number 2 in juke rate, number 3 in evaded tackles on Player Profiler. This is last year. So even a little bit of a down year, got a little banged up, had a weird situation in Seattle. The offense melted down a bit. Well, now they have Ryan Grubb. Now they're, going to have a much better offense. They're opening it up. DK Metcalf even said they're going to feature the running game more. So I think most people, we have really short-term memories for fantasy. So Walker, electric player, all the talent in the world, great advanced metrics. Now the opportunity is going to be back. I think that Seattle offense will be better. And I think he's going to finish the top 7 running back. And I'm shocked how low he went in drafts. I have a ton of KW.
Yeah, top 7. That's pretty high, but I think he has the opportunity. I think the big thing is if he gets unlocked in the passing game, just like with Devon Achane. Clearly the theme is like, are these running backs going to get pass catching opportunities? I think he will be able to. Just like Achane, though, it's like, can KW3 stay healthy, man? Like, we just need him to be healthy for like most of the season, right? So,
well, the thing with both these running backs, though, they don't have like repetitive injuries. I mean, running back is a hard position. People get hurt, but it's like spinning a roulette wheel for the most part. So unless a guy has like a consistent knee issue or some real medical red flag, I think people overrate a little bit. I think that's something that actually pulls people down a bit too much in ADP.
Yeah, love KW3, have him on a few teams, so I hope that pans out. I will leave us with one bonus, and I think this is someone that you and everyone knows that I love because I love running quarterbacks. Jaden Daniels will finish as a top 10 quarterback. So on DraftKings, his line which we all know like Vegas or betting lines are pretty accurate, right? And they're a little bit more conservative, I'd say. His line for this week is 220 yards passing and 40 yards rushing. I'd say those lines they sound attainable, right?
Yeah.
40 yards rushing for a guy that we know is going to be running a lot is pretty low. So if you put that into context, that is the same fantasy points as someone who throws for 320 yards, right? So put that into context, right? So if you extrapolate that over a full season, that is grabbing a quarterback that throws for 5,400 yards across a season.
It's crazy.
Well beyond the top 10, right? So
yeah.
if you put that into context, I know anything can happen. Rookies will be up and down. You'll have spike weeks and bad weeks, but overall, I think that Jaden Daniels pick could be a big one. All right, let's shift gears though. Let's talk SmashUp a little bit because that's why we're here. SmashUp is definitely something I'm excited to play from a league standpoint. First time ever on SmashUp platform. We have league play. I know we're in several leagues. We're in a pretty big home league that we have that's expanded to 25 players. So that's already kicked off because we saw some of the performances from the Ravens and Chiefs lead to some big starts last week. We also have an industry league, which I'm excited about. You and I are both in this, but we're also playing against some of the folks within the industry, some well-known analysts that are playing against us. And we're going to be following all along to see how they do versus each other and to see if we can stack up against them. I'm pretty confident. I like our odds from a SmashUp team perspective. But we'll have to see. So we're going to be tracking that performance of the league all season long. We'll be sharing updates on our socials. Again, we'll be tagging the analysts, so you'll see who they are. You'll see how some of your boys, Chef and Hawk, compare versus them. And hopefully you're rooting for us and you'll cheer us along. Thoughts on this, Chris? You think you can get this one or what?
I'm chasing the crown. I'm chasing it. I'm going to catch it.
Awesome. All right, cool. Well, I'm excited about that. But let's talk about who we like within SmashUp. And we want to kick this off. This is going to be the first of many segments related to SmashUp, but we think this will be a good regular one. We want to rank our top plays from a player card combo perspective to just give some of the users and some listeners some insights into some of the possible combinations, some of the ones we like for each week based on matchups, based on the player, based on the card. And we'll list them out and we'll see if they bear out. Obviously, we'll have an opportunity on the next pod to look back and see if we hit on any of those. But let's kick this off with our top 3 plays for this week. So, Hawk, why don't you start us off?
Sweet. So one of the things, too, is factoring in like the salary cap, both for the players as well as for your Smash cards. So one combo I like, Justin Herbert, who's only 5.8K, contrasts that the top quarterbacks are closer to 8. With the Cannon Arm card, which is a reminder, gives you a multiplier on all of your passing yards, but it takes a little bit away from your quarterback rushing yards. Quarterback passing yards, quarterback rushing yards. Thing is, before last season, the prior 2 years, Herbert threw for 4,700 and 5,000 yards and 25 and 38 touchdowns. He was a legitimate superstar. And now he's back. He's in a Harbaugh offense that I think should be even better than what he had, certainly under Staley, a bit of a mess last year. So at that price, I like him. I think he could be a good value play. That's a little bit of a cheaper quarterback going up against a bad Raiders team, and then lets you spend some more money on other positions.
Yeah, Herbert is a guy that, and I think you know this, I've talked about on this pod, like I was staying away from. But the cool thing about SmashUp is if things change, right, you didn't miss on that value because I know he was not being drafted in a lot of leagues, especially one quarterback leagues. In SmashUp, though, if you think he has a high upside play, he will be cheap. So I think that's a good play, especially with Cannon Arm. All right, I will keep it with the quarterbacks, and I'll kind of take a different route, not from a pure value perspective based on initial price, but what I think could be a really big potential point output. I like Josh Allen. He's going to have a big week. He's an expensive quarterback. He's one of the top price quarterbacks at 8K this week, and you are getting what you pay for, though, my friend. And if you stack Mr. Relevant, if you stack Mr. Relevant, that card, which will give points to quarterbacks if they throw for over 250 yards and rush for more than 20. So there's one of those cards where it's more of that player proposition or that parlay type of mechanic. You can get 30 points. And so I think he can easily throw for over 250 yards, and he averages beyond 20 yards rushing every game. I think he's going to have a monster week playing at home, opening up against a really bad Arizona defense. So I wouldn't be surprised if you stack Mr. Relevant on Josh Allen if you're getting close to 35, maybe upside of 40 points alone on that combination.
All right. Aaron Jones, 6.5K, cheap on the running back side. And I like him with Hall of Fame running backs. I think against the Giants with the fourth worst run defense last year, Jones is primed for a big game. Can run the ball, can catch the ball. Over 4.7 yards per carry last year, over 7.8 yards per reception, which was number 2 among running backs. And so I like him with, Hall of Fame running back. It's an expensive card. I think he's going to put up a bunch of points. 8.5K of your 12K Smash card salary cap for that. Or you could also use him with Fallacious Halfback, which is only 6K. And that's the one where your running backs get multiplied by 1.75. So way more running back points. But your quarterback basically goes down significantly. So it could be an opportunity, maybe not even play a quarterback and put a lot of money into your running backs and receivers and just, go to the moon. And Jones is slightly cheaper running back will help you do that.
Okay. I don't know if I love that one. I know I was joking earlier. Aaron Jones is one of those guys that I'm just like, I don't know what to make of, right? I think he had just a varying season last year. That Minnesota team, I don't know if people love it, but you're right. They are playing the Giants week 1, so we'll have to see.
Well, the thing with Jones, he's a beast when he's healthy. He's had injuries, so he's had hamstring issues last season, but he said the great thing about SmashUp, if he stays healthy, I can get his 120, yard week this week. If he pulls his hammy next week, it doesn't kill my season, because I can go pick up a new player the next week with my salary cap.
That's right. Good thing about SmashUp, right? Week to week. All right. So I'll go next with another running back on Achane. We talked about him earlier.
Yeah.
I love him week 1 against a Jacksonville team that he has big play potential. From a price perspective, 6,800. Definitely not a top running back price. The running backs at the top, I think McCaffrey is around 81, 8,200, but definitely the top ones are in the 8K. So Achane is like at the middle of the pack of more the elite running backs. And then if you apply the Freight Train card onto him, which is costing 5K, again, not a cheap card, but based on Freight Train, if a running back gets a 30-yard or more carry or rush, that's 30 points in the bank. And we know with Devon Achane, he's got the big play potential, more so than maybe anyone else in the league right now. So I love that.
Love his odds of that against Jacksonville. It was a great call.
Yep. And if Vegas is right, this game has one of, if not the highest implied total of the week. So definitely want to be a part of those games. And I think a little strategy for SmashUp users is definitely want to look at those games where there's high implied totals, because that's definitely a suggestion. There's going to be a lot of offense, a lot of scoring, which means a lot of fantasy points. All right, what do you got next?
Do you maybe really quickly want to explain what implied total means?
Sure. Yep. For implied totals, basically it's what the stated or estimated score might be, the line for that game. So if in this case, the implied total for the Jacksonville-Miami game is 51, that means the thinking is that there will be a total of 51 points scored in the game. That means it could be 27 to 24. Because 27-24 is a higher scoring game. Yep. You want to be attached to when you're playing fantasy, because that means your players are scoring those touchdowns, they're getting those yards that lead to these high scores. So from a fantasy perspective and a SmashUp perspective, you like and want high scoring games, and you want the players that are attached to those games as well. So I definitely want pieces of this game, and Devon Achane is one of them.
And I would see that right by looking at the over-under. I think that's where the implied score would typically be.
You look at the over-under. I think at this point with gambling and betting permeating almost every site, anywhere you see like the scoreboard for the game, before the game starts, they'll list the over-under there.
Awesome.
All right. What do you got next?
Next, I've got Kyle Pitts, which is kind of crazy to me because he's been a hot name. He's been a tight end who's gone for really high in drafts, and yet he's only 4.6K this week.
Well, he's hurt already.
But he's healthy. No, he's healthy.
He's healthy. He's healthy, but he already was hurt coming into this game. So I'm saying I think that's part of the cost that's being baked into account.
All right. So Kyle Pitts, he could be the Pitts if he gets hurt, but I think if he plays, he's a hybrid. They're going to use him as a hybrid receiver, tight end this year. I'm not quite as high on him, from a draft perspective as other people were, but I do like him. He's got high upside at 4.6. I like the gamble. I still don't know. He scored 5 touchdowns total the last 2 seasons, and we'll see if that's a recurring issue. So I like Endzone is Lava on him. Endzone is Lava only a 3.5K card, but it multiplies all the receiving yards and gives you a bonus so long as the player doesn't score a touchdown. If it scores a touchdown, you get 0 for the card. But I think there's a good chance, Pitts could have 80 yards, no scores. And so I love this card.
Yeah, no, I do think it's a good call. I don't know if I would use him week 1 just because not only is it Kyle Pitts, I also just want to see what Kirk Cousins looks like, right? Like no one's talking about the fact that he's coming back from an Achilles tear. Like that's a big one for a 36-year-old quarterback.
Yeah.
But I do love the fact that Kyle Pitts is a great person to potentially use this season on SmashUp. In redraft, I stayed away from him. If he's good, great. I just didn't want that risk. But SmashUp, you could start using him later in the season if you're comfortable with his floor and his ceiling and things like that. So,
well, and I think as you've implied, it's value, right? So he's low right now,
yeah.
Getting a low price because people don't know. So it's a bit of a risk that could pay off. Obviously, if they play really well, if Cousins looks good, his salary will go up over the season.
For sure. Yep. Okay, my last one is I like the LA Chargers defense this week versus the Raiders. The defense of the Chargers is 2,900, so not the highest priced defense, definitely not the lowest, but somewhere in the middle. And I love playing actually two cards on the Chargers defense. So one is defense wins championships. If your defense wins, that's an automatic 15 points stacked onto your total team output. And also takeaway card, which is for turnovers, right? So that card is 3K. Defense wins champions 2K. So it's a total of 5K spent on cards. But we're talking a potential between those cards of an extra 25 points projected put on the LA Chargers. I think with the Raiders having Gardner Minshew as their quarterback, week one is definitely not necessarily where teams like the Raiders figure things out. So I definitely like the Chargers, especially with Harbaugh coming in, and I like utilizing them in week.
I agree. I'm actually using them in our industry league, not to give away my secrets before the game starts.
I know, can't share too much, but there you go. All right, so that's our top 3 rankings of player card combinations for SmashUp. Hopefully you guys are thinking about different combinations as well. We could have been sitting here talking about player combinations and card combinations for another 10 or 15 minutes, but that'll kick you guys off to think about what combinations you want to use. And obviously your lineup's got another 7-8 positions that you've got to fill in. So definitely think about more of those card combos. And we'll go back and revisit to see if we called any of these right. And then we'll be talking about this all season long, right?
Awesome. We'll keep track.
For sure. All right. Well, that wraps up this pod. We're looking forward to what the rest of week 1 looks like. We've got games tonight. We've got more games on Sunday, obviously. And then we got a fantastic Jets-Niners game. We'll see the return of Aaron Rodgers, and we'll see if the Niners can restart their journey to hopefully getting back to the Super Bowl. And then we'll be back to recap weekend 1 and then go on from there. So, Hawk, why don't you tell everyone how they can listen along and where they can keep up to date on all things SmashUp?
Yep. First things first, subscribe to the pod on whatever podcast software you use to listen or on YouTube. Then go to smashupsports.com and register to play. Season-long leagues. We've got the free weekly tournaments now. No entry fees, no pay to win, but grand prize winner gets $1,000 every week.
Yes, sir.
And top 20 gets a ticket to the Tournament of Champions in the NFL postseason with $10,000 of prizes on the line. Additionally, go follow us on social media at SmashUp Sports, pretty much across the board. You can also look in the description below, and they'll be listed there. Otherwise, we will see you on SmashUp and look forward to seeing how we did next week.
And I'm going to smash Chris in all the leagues, of course. All right, we're out.
SmashPod out.
Smash Bros out.
Toe in the line.
Oh, my God.
Toegasm.